exact numbers, so I'm hesitant to quote, but it is.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our Open edX conference. Let me start by thanking our hosts, Wellesley College and Ravi Shankar, for helping us host the conference on this beautiful leafy campus on a spectacular fall day. Berkeley has a direct line, Wellesley College has a direct line to the weather gods, and so I hear it's going to be in the 70s today, so it's going to be spectacular. But you are all going to be inside listening to talks, remember. So I'm really delighted to open the conference, and what I thought I'd do is start by giving you a very quick overview of edX, where are we today, a very quick view of Open edX from about 100,000 feet. And I'm sure our team will go through added levels of detail. And following that, I'd like to spend a few minutes talking about where I think education is going to be going, what's going to happen at universities, where education is going to be going in the future, and how this might create opportunities for some of your organizations as you create open learning environments and systems for universities and corporations. So very quickly, our mission hasn't changed. Over 4 years, we have not pivoted, as they say. Pivot speak is important in California. Here we are a nonprofit. Our mission has been pretty steadfast. We have a three-part goal. One is to expand access to education throughout the world. And our open source platform and support for open source is a huge part of how we believe we will increase access. So in a moment of not thinking 4 years ago, we announced that we're going to educate 1 billion people in about 10 years. And we're counting on our Open edX partners to bite into a sizable chunk of that number. So your help is going to be crucial to getting to reaching a large part of the world. Our second part of our mission is to improve the quality of education. If at the end of the day, all we did with the platform that we are collectively developing is spew out videos and multiple choice, this is not interesting. And so creating a quality platform with high quality assessments, with some of the incredible work that you all are doing with simulations and X-blocks. But to me, the biggest sign of success is when I've completely lost track of all the innovations that are happening. And the list goes on and on. Very exciting. And innovations like this will really help improve education, both on campuses, as campuses adopt the blended model of learning. The third part of our mission is to advance research in learning. As we collect the big data of learning, doing research with that learning to understand how students learn, thereby improving learning itself. And towards that end, edX launched RDX over the summer, a research data exchange. This was for edX partners, where they could share data amongst themselves in partially de-identified form. Our hope is that over time, there can be broader sharing of data as organizations get more comfortable with de-identifying data to various degrees and sharing data and research across organizations. In the 3.5 or so years that we've been around, our impact has been pretty good. So today we are at about 5.3 million learners from every single country in the world. We have 18 million course enrollments across the courses on edX, with about 700 courses on the platform, 90 institutional partners, and just a huge number of blended courses running on campuses as well. And this does not count any of the Open edX institutions. 2.5 years ago, we launched out our software as open source, as Open edX. And our friend from IBL Studios tweeted out a comment I made at the Learning with MOOCs conference at Columbia last weekend, where I said, open sourcing the platform was probably one of the best decisions we ever made. And I stand by that. It's just a wonderful decision. There are trade-offs, as you might imagine. We are a small organization, nonprofit, about 130, 140 people, and supporting an initiative that takes resources and effort. And so we have a team within edX that focuses on open edX, and we are committed to making that successful and thriving. And we really hope that together we will accomplish just the colossal goals that we have set for ourselves. As you can see here, the adoption of open edX has been growing worldwide. Here are just some sample sites that were some of the very earliest sites that came up using open edX. So for example, you will see here FUN, which is the France Université Numérique. Anyone here from FUN? There you go, welcome. One of the earliest sites using open edX. Shuetang X from China. This is a Chinese national platform, also one of the very early sites. Stanford launched lagunita.stanford.edu, again a very early site. And a number of other sites, McKinsey Academy, for example, Durub from Saudi Arabia, Edrak from Jordan. And today, the numbers are even more staggering. But before I talk about that, a particularly interesting site was one that went up 2 weeks ago, about 3 weeks ago, on September 14th. This is called openedu.ru. This is the Russian national platform. And so this was launched by Livanov, the Minister of Education of Russia, as an open national platform for Russian universities. And they already had close to 50 courses in Russian on that site. There's also another MOOC that came up from an organization called Lectorium.tv that talks about, it's a MOOC intended for the Russian community of open edX users. Now again, I just point this out just as an example. I travel, in my role at edX, I travel all the world looking and talking to various companies and organizations. And there, you hear about just incredible adoptions of open edX all over. And this is one company in Russia, for example, that has launched a MOOC to train people on how to use the open edX platform. So growth has been accelerating, as I said. So this chart here shows you, as a function of time, the number of adoptions of open edX, the number of sites of open edX around the world, and also number of courses on open edX around the world. And so you can notice that it's about over 1,800 courses. So if you count, so this says that there's more than twice as many courses on open edX sites as there are on edX itself. And together it's over 2,500 courses. This is absolutely fantastic. There's 146 sites in a large number of languages all over the world, and you can see how the chart continues to increase. And it's really through your efforts that this is happening. Now it turns out that this is the sites we know about. These are the number of courses we know about. My team tells me that there are likely an order of magnitude more courses on sites that we do not know about. And at the end of the presentation, I'll show you a couple of pointers. We are looking for your help for us to be able to promote you. So I'll suggest a couple of ideas where you can give us information so we can talk about your sites. As we go and talk around the world, I'd love to put up and advertise your sites and talk about the work that you are doing, but you have to let us know so we can promote you. So this has been, so you might think that we did this out of the goodness of our hearts. Well, that's true. We did open source it because we felt it was the right thing to do. But that said, we have been absolutely astounded as to what the whole community is getting back from you at the same time. And the number of features on the platform that have come largely in whole or in part from the edX community is utterly mind-boggling. And this is, June of 2013 when we open sourced, to today we are barely 2.5 years into it, and the velocity and the work that you've done is amazing during this time. So just as some examples of some of the features contributed by Open edX team members include, for example, from Stanford, one of the more recent ones was integration of OLI, and this is the Open Learning Initiative work that Candace Still and Ross Strader have been doing, integration of that technology into edX. I won't read through all of it. From Harvard, one of the recent ones, integration into campus platforms. And so this is an integration of LTI, both as where edX can read LTI, and also where edX can serve as a LTI tool provider, so that if you have Canvas or Blackboard or other LTI platforms on campus, you can play some content within edX, and you can show that to campus students. Still a lot more work to do into turning this into a solid, production-worthy, scalable deployment, but a lot of this came from, as I recall, the work that John Zornick from University of Queensland did. Harvard was part of it. So this was really some amazing collaboration, in two very distant parts of the globe. So I'm really excited and proud of the amount of work that has gone on in improving the edX platform. And keep up the fantastic work. And I know there's so much more that we can do, and I'll tell you some of my dreams. So this is not, I'm not committing to doing this tomorrow. There's so much to do. But I'll tell you some of my dreams here. One of my dreams is, I've heard there's at least 50 to 100 spectacular X blocks just sitting there waiting to be adopted. And so I can just imagine having a shared repository sometime in the future where you have all the X blocks, sort of like a library, where people can just use them. Just imagine if there's some e-commerce capability where X blocks could be, you could use them, you click, you pay $1 or whatever, some cool e-commerce capability, so that the ecosystem that you're part of could contribute and enable various people to use your X blocks within their platform, and for there to be some e-commerce to grease the way of adoptions and also help you sustain yourselves. So lots of cool things we can do. So the next part of this presentation, I'd just like to dream a little bit and think about with a technology like this, as we bring technology into learning, how might this change education? And if whether I'm a campus university or a high school, or whether I'm a platform provider, how might we think of the future of education, and where might the world go? Now again, this is not a prediction. Think of this more as a dream. And I'll ask a bunch of provocative questions, and as you think about those questions yourself, you'll wonder, why is that so? So for example, the key word I'll keep using is bundling. So today, universities are bundled into 4 years. So when you're 18, you're supposed to finish high school, apply to university, go to a campus, that's starting at the age of 18, and spend 4 years on campus. So you want to ask yourselves the question, why 18? Why 4 years on campus? As an example, when I was an undergraduate in the late 70s at IIT Madras in India, it was 5 years. We spent 5 years on campus. And I remember there was talk of making it 4 years. And there was a huge debate that said, IITs are going to go down the toilet if you did this. This is terrible. And guess what? Today it's 4 years. And IITs are still fine. So change can happen. And the doomsayers, doom may not come. It may be okay. And so you wonder, why 4 years? Why at the age of 18? So why are we bundling time into that, in terms of education, into the period from whatever, from birth to 22 or 23? And why are we bundling education there, particularly higher ed? Why are we bundling it at the age of 18 into 4 years? And we are bundling time in that respect. So it's interesting to dream about how might things change. Why bundle things? The whole world has changed. Everything changes every few years today. And I want to ask you this, but I love asking at conferences, what fraction of what you learned as an undergraduate are you using in your daily job today? And by and large, the fraction that you use may not be 100%. It's usually a much smaller number. And so the world keeps changing, and you have to keep learning. So as an example, I learned to program using Fortran in the late 70s using punch cards. And I remember by the time my undergraduate thesis came around, I was using a Prime computer, and it was unbelievable. The fact that I could sit down at a workstation and not have to get on my bike and carry a deck of cards back and forth was just absolutely spectacular. This was like moving to a microwave oven when previously I had to heat my coffee using a charcoal grill or something like that. I mean, this was huge. And so progress has been happening every 5-10 years in huge ways. And so, in this day and age, learning once and then living the rest of your life, even as lifespans get longer, this doesn't make any sense. And so we need to a different model of learning, perhaps. And so one thing that I've talked about and blogged about is called continuous learning or lifelong learning. The idea is, imagine if you could come to campus having completed roughly 1 year of your education already. So imagine when you're in high school or wherever else, you go online and you do the basic subjects and learn for a year. Then you go to campus for 2 years to get the campus experience. I don't know, whether it's 3 years or 2 years or 1 year, some amount of time. And then following that, you get a job and you go into industry and you work. And while you work, you keep learning for the rest of your life. And you perhaps get a subscription back to your university, or you get a subscription to a consortium of university, and you pick and choose a la carte. If your job demands that you learn about project management, heck, you take the project management course from Adelaide online. Or if you want to learn about programming, you take a programming course. It doesn't matter. You pick and choose as your job demands, and you become a continuous learner for the rest of your life. So your 4 years becomes one where the first year happens earlier, and the last year happens throughout life, and this might unbundle time. So that's one example. Second one is we also bundle content in universities. So today when you go to a university, virtually everything comes from that university. So the lectures come from the professor at the university. The professor might record some videos, they come from that university. All the assessment comes from that professor and his or her TAs at the university. Tutoring comes from the university. Everything happens at the university. And very often the textbook is also written by the professor or one of the folks from the university. And so even the content is completely bundled. It's almost like a one-stop shop where you go in. And reminds me a lot of the AT&T, the pink AT&T phone that used to be sit around in the early 80s or late 70s, where you bought everything from AT&T. They sent you a phone. You dialed 411, an AT&T operator came on. You did long distance. You got AT&T. You had a problem with your service. You called AT&T. Everything was AT&T. It's all bundled. But where's the world today? About 30 years later, it's all unbundled. You buy your phones from, Apple or Samsung or one of the other phone providers. You get service from Sprint or Verizon or somebody else. You get your 411 from yet somebody else. You get your long distance services and international services. You can subscribe to different services. The whole thing is unbundled. And what that did was dramatically ratchet up quality and also dramatically give you a lot of choice and really fostered incredibly fast innovation. And so one thing to think about is, can we imagine unbundling content? So just imagine, if I could go to a campus and the professor might say, hey, you know what? I'm not going to lecture. I'm going to point you to some online resources, open education resources or other online resources. You get the content, your video content from there. Yeah, I really love creating assessments, so I'm going to create fantastic problem sets and give those to you so you can give you formative assessments and help you learn. You might say, we don't have the resources at a university. We don't have graduate students. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a tutoring service and an external tutoring service where it doesn't matter what time it is, you click a button and you're connected to a tutor somewhere in the world. So you can imagine unbundling some of these services and improving student engagement and possibly reducing costs at university as well. Why should you have to do everything? Why should a university have to offer every single kind of course? In the languages department, let's say I don't have a Latin teacher. How the heck do I offer Latin? Just imagine if I could unbundle content and say, look, we don't have a Latin course. We have students who want to take Latin. Heck, I can point to this resource online and you can take a Latin course and I'll give you credit for it locally. So that's the concept of unbundling content. And technology and the platform that all of us are engaged in can help make this happen. And it's interesting to dream whether the future of university is going to be unbundled. Just like in '82, if someone had said this to AT&T, they would have said, no way people are going to be able to do this. It's all going to be one package, it's us. It didn't take more than 10 years for the whole thing to get unbundled, and things are moving in that direction already. So I'll give you a couple of examples. So one is in terms of unbundling time. So we launched the Global Freshman Academy in partnership with Arizona State University. So the idea here is that any student anywhere in the world, there's no admissions requirements, can take 1 year's worth of general education courses on edX from Arizona State University. You can take the course for free, or you can pay $45 and sign up for a verified certificate. If you do, you get a proctored exam, and if you pass the course with the proctored exam, you get a verified certificate for $45 for the course. And if that's all you want, you're done, you have a certificate, you can move on. However, if you want campus credit, you can then pay $600 and open up a transcript at ASU and get campus credit. And $600 is about half in-state tuition. So here's a way that students can now take 1 whole year's worth of general education online at very low cost and get campus credit at ASU. And if you want to transfer that credit somewhere else, other universities that accept ASU credit, you could. It's the same ASU transcript that a campus student at ASU would open. And so this is a step in the direction of unbundling time. And what is shocking is that statistics show that the number of students in the US who do go to college at the age of 18 and then complete a 4-year program is only about 25%. Only 1 in 4 students is this model of the student that we think about, 18 and for 4 years. A majority of students are more of the continuing learners that go in and out of college or simply don't go to college and maybe come back in later. And some of these unbundling of time concepts can enable more of that to happen. And certainly this has been recognized as a watershed moment, and quite a few of the press folks have thought about this as heralding a possible big change in how we might work at universities. Another announcement on this came out on Wednesday of this week from MIT. MIT launched the MicroMasters. MIT launched the MicroMasters credential, where the idea is that and with supply chain in supply chain management, you can take about 3 or 4 or 5 courses, and if you pass those courses, you take a proctored exam, and you get a MicroMasters credential from MIT. And then, if you want to, you can apply to MIT, and your performance in this will count towards admission into MIT. You can come to campus and complete the 2nd semester on campus, and then earn a master's degree. So with a half semester's worth of work, completely 100% online, no admissions, no requirements in terms of admissions. You just take it. If you can cut it, you get a MicroMasters, and that may be enough for you. Or if you want to continue for a master's, you apply for campus, and then you get a master's degree on campus. So here's another example of how we can unbundle time. And so I think it's really interesting to see how we might evolve the university. And if you want to read more about this concept of unbundling, you might want to read a blog post that I wrote about 2 years ago now. And if you Google Huffington Post and unbundled, you can find this blog post that talks about these concepts and how we may be able to apply them. And finally, before we go into a few questions, let me suggest that if you have any questions, we have about 5 minutes for questions. We don't have mics going around the hall, so if you have any questions, if you want to come on up to the front, and I can yell out the question, I can repeat the question if you have any, and then answer and take any questions. One of the things, as I promised earlier, is we would love to hear about your site. We just don't know what, since you can download the software and run with your site, we just don't know you have it. So I encourage you to tell us about yourselves, tell us about your site, how many students do you have, how many courses, how many languages, where are you, who are you? Give us a screenshot of your site so we can help promote you and spread the word. So as a first step, I encourage you to go take the survey and fill out the survey and let us know about yourselves. And also soon, on the Open edX portal, open.edx.org, Joel tells me that soon there will be a button where you can click on the button, and that will also help you give us the information about your site. We also encourage you to spread the word on your site. We'd love you to say "Powered by Open edX" at the bottom of your site as well. That will also be very helpful to us and to the movement that we are all involved in together. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions from you if there are any. Given we have no mics, it would be helpful if you have questions to come up to the front and I can repeat the question. Maybe not. Well, thank you all, and have a good conference. Thank you. It's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Mitch Resnick. Professor Mitch Resnick is a colleague of mine at MIT. He's the Lego Papert Professor of Learning Research, and he heads up the Lifelong Kindergarten Group. So this is fantastic, Lifelong Kindergarten, absolutely love that. And he's at the MIT Media Lab. So welcome, Mitch, and look forward to your talk.
Good morning. It's great to be here. It was great to get a little bit of an update. It was great to hear about the great progress going on with Open edX. I was going to talk today about the importance of cultivating creativity in the educational experiences that we're supporting. And actually, I do think this follows up well on some of the things that Anant was talking about, in that the society we're living today is changing more rapidly than ever before. As Anant said, it no longer works to have a fixed period of time for education and then you go off and just execute for the rest of your life. We need to be constantly learning new things and also confronting new situations. I think the one thing we know is going to be true about the world as we look ahead is that things are going to be continuing to change more rapidly than ever before. And if we live in a rapidly changing world, it means that you have to be prepared to confront uncertain and unknown situations. And that means one of the most important things for everyone to develop is the ability to think creatively, to come up with innovative solutions for the unexpected things that confront us, as we go about our lives. But unfortunately, the education system is not at all set up to support young people developing as creative thinkers. And that's what we really focus on in my research group, is how can we help young people develop as creative thinkers so that they'll be prepared to constantly adapt and to be able to deal with the new and uncertain situations that will undoubtedly come to them in the world ahead. As we've thought about the best way of preparing people as creative thinkers, actually we've thought about our own experiences at the MIT Media Lab where I work. Over the last decade, I've been the head of the academic program there, and I've thought about how can we improve the academic environment at the Media Lab. And the Media Lab is well known as a very creative, innovative place. And I've thought, what is it that's at the core of the creativity and the innovation at a place like the Media Lab at MIT? And I've tended to summarize it. A group of us came up with the framework that we call the 4 Ps of projects, peers, passion, and play. And we think that's the way we run things at the Media Lab, that we think that the researchers and the students at the Media Lab are very creative because it's an environment where people work on projects based on things they're passionate about, collaborating with peers in a playful spirit. And we think that that works well at the Media Lab, but we want to make sure it's not just at the Media Lab or other labs at MIT, but that everyone should have those same sorts of experiences. So as we think about online learning, we think about how can we support projects, peers, passion, and play in online learning experiences? Or with apologies to John Lennon, how can we give peace a chance? So in my presentation, I'm going to talk for a good part of the presentation about an online environment that we've created in my group at the Media Lab that's called Scratch, a programming language and online community for young people. But then the second half of the presentation, I'll talk about how we took some of the lessons we learned and tried to apply it to an online course that some of us taught from the Media Lab, and I'll talk about some of our experiences with bringing it to an online course. But let me start by talking about not an online course, but an online learning environment that's called Scratch. So this is a site that we put up, it was about 8 years ago now, in 2007. It was a place for young people, our target was age 8 to 15, to be able to program their own interactive stories, games, animations, and share their creations with one another in an online community. In the last 8 years, actually you can see on the homepage now, there's more than 10 million projects that have been shared, about more than 7 million people who have registered as members of this online community. And every day there's 15,000 new projects that are shared by young people around the world. So it's a pretty active online community. In fact, it's now the most actively used subdomain in the whole MIT website. It gets more traffic than the MIT homepage or OpenCourseWare. Our kids around the world coming and programming in Scratch. If you haven't seen Scratch before, just to give you a sense of it, you write programs in Scratch by snapping together graphical programming blocks into scripts like this one. Each of these scripts will control the behavior of a character, or we call them sprites, in this case to make a game where you're controlling a big fish to eat little fish. So you create these scripts to control characters, but then importantly, you can click the share button and share your project into the online community. I think we're the first programming language that when we launched the online community at the same time, because we felt the community was so important for people to be able to share their ideas with others, to be able to see what others are doing, and so they could see what others are doing and also get feedback on what they're creating. So it's been exciting for us to see the wide range of different types of projects that people do. We're excited about the number of projects going up on the website, more than 10 million projects. But even more exciting to us is the diversity of projects. If you look at the website, you see everything from animated stories to interactive birthday cards that people create, to animate comic strips, to virtual construction kits. Actually, this was made by a teenager in Belgium who actually made a virtual Lego construction kit, which we never imagined Scratch could really be used for this, but he created it. We got to know him that way. He's now a student at MIT as an undergraduate and contributing to the Scratch site. You can recreations of classic video games like Donkey Kong, new games and like dress-up doll games, tutorials, interactive artwork, science projects. So in all of these, kids share these online, and it's a type of open source community. Everything that kids share is shared by Creative Commons under Creative Commons license. So everything is open for remixing. And in fact, of the 10 million projects on the site, about 30% or 3 million are remixes, where you can look at someone's project, play with their project, but then look inside, see the scripts, grab the scripts and use them as part of your project. So it's this active environment where kids are building on one another's work. Just to give you some examples, like this is a project from a school in India where in the classroom they were studying the layers of the earth. And there's a 13-year-old, he decided for his final project, rather than write a report or do a PowerPoint presentation, he's giving an animated guided tour of the earth, with a voiceover. He's speaking in his native language of Kannada, explaining what's going on. His teacher explained to us that what he was most excited about was he was surprised to find that things are moving inside the earth. He said, I thought everything was solid. I can't believe things are moving. So he talks about the water table and other things that are moving inside the earth. So it's a way for him to share what it is that he's learned and also tell other people about the layers of the earth. Or here's a project from a middle school in New Jersey where they were in a social studies class, they were studying the island of Rapa Nui, or Easter Island off of South America. And one of the students did what sort of like Sim Rapa Nui, a simulated world where you can travel around and you have to learn to survive in Rapa Nui based on what he had learned about the culture and the history and the economy of Rapa Nui. Fishing is the main part of the economy, so in order to survive, you have to cut down a tree to get a fishing pole, to make a fishing rod, and then get fish. But if you cut down too many trees, the god happiness goes down. So again, this is a way for him to share what he had learned and help other people learn about what was going on in Rapa Nui. In this case, actually, these two cases are different. With the one in India, they had learned Scratch in school, so the whole class was doing projects like that. In this case, he had learned Scratch at home with his friends, and then he asked the teacher, could I do my final project in Scratch? She hadn't heard about it, but was open enough to let him do it, and then it started spreading through the classroom as he introduced it into the classroom. So Scratch gets used somewhat in classrooms, and in fact, that's one of the fastest growing parts of Scratch. But a lot of Scratch happens outside of classrooms, kids doing it at home, in libraries, museums, community centers. Let me tell a story about one girl in California who used Scratch. Her Scratch username is Ipsy, and there's a page from one of her projects where she's talking about things that, some of the things that she likes. And like a lot of teenage girls in California, of course, she likes Disneyland, she likes Sailor Moon, Adventure Time. One of the things she likes best is drawing. She writes on her webpage that she loves drawing all of the time. And she'd never written a computer program before finding out about Scratch, but one of her friends told her that if she went to Scratch, she could make her drawings come alive. She could animate her drawings. So she decided to come and try it out. This is one of the first projects that she did on the Scratch website. And she took one of her drawings, and no, she just added a little bit of animation to it. So you can sort of see she's starting with something that she's comfortable with, drawing, but like dipping her toe in the water of programming. If you do see inside, you can see the script. This is the script she wrote that switches between costumes to do a simple form of animation. So that's how she got started, but then she became more and more interested in how to do different types of animations and to tell different types of animated stories. Again, like many of the young people in Scratch, she built on things that she was interested in. She loved the books, The Warrior Cats. This is a popular series of books among elementary school kids. So she decided to take some of the things she learned from the Warrior Cats books and create a whole Warrior Cats world in Scratch. So this is her Warrior Cats project, where you can design a warrior cat and then use it to explore the world. And there are 4 different clans of cats, and you can interact with different cats and find out more about the interests and strategies and plans of the different cats in the different clans. So again, she put up this project on the Scratch website, and again, lots of people saw it, and a lot of people were impressed with her artwork in this project and other projects. So she started getting lots of comments about, well, how did you do that? Could you show me how I could do this type of animation? Could I use some of your different types of animated characters? Or people asked her if she would be willing to make characters for them. So then she started putting up projects like the next one, which were a series of her characters, which she was encouraging other people to use. You'll notice that she's now into branding her work. So these are some of the productions from Ipsy's studio. And you might not be able to read, but in the instructions, she puts rules like, you can edit these as much as you want, but you must give me credit for any of these entries. So again, she's learning about the importance of attribution and trying to be a good citizen. She knows the projects are covered by Creative Commons, but it's Creative Commons for attribution, so she's telling people it's fine to use it, but you have to give me credit and attribution. And we've set up the website to support people giving attribution and to encourage that type of attribution. But it wasn't just her images that she was sharing. Other people asked about her programming. In some of her programs, there's scrolling backgrounds. And it's not so easy to make scrolling backgrounds in Scratch. Actually, I wish it were easier. We didn't come up with a really easy way for kids to do scrolling backgrounds, but it's possible. So she found out how to do scrolling backgrounds, and others said, can you show us how you did that? So she put up tutorials like this one, the basic scrolling game tutorial, where it goes through and you can see the background scrolling here, and then she shows the different scripts that you need to do to get this type of scrolling background. And if you see inside, she has this commented code that shows how to do that. So I think, as we see young people like Ipsy work on projects like this, and actually, I've never met Ipsy, I've never talked to her, I just learned about her through the website. But I think even just by seeing her projects and the way she's interacted, and she's made more than 100 projects, and her projects have been remixed thousands of times, we can see that I think that Ipsy really is learning through projects, peers, passion, and play. She's clearly worked on projects. Again, she has more than 100 projects. She's interacting with her peers, offering her projects, offering her scripts and her images for others to use, being inspired by other projects on the site. She's clearly worked on things she's passionate about, like the Warrior Cats books and her own animations, and she presents her projects in a playful spirit where she's trying new things, experimenting all of the time. And I think this captures the spirit we were looking for on the Scratch website. So I was going to go through each of the 4 Ps and say a little bit more about each of them to say, how is it that we try to support these 4 Ps on the Scratch website? So to start with projects. Now, if you look at Scratch, it might seem obvious. Well, of course, if you're helping kids learn to code, then of course they're going to work on projects. But in fact, that's not the way most websites help kids learn to code. Most of them do not take a project-oriented approach. As you might know, in the last few years, there's been a lot of enthusiasm about helping kids learn to code. But on most sites where you learn to code, is on things like this. You're given puzzles about get this character to move from here to there, put together different blocks in order to achieve this challenge. And again, this can be valuable. A lot of people are learning to code this way. And there's nothing wrong with puzzles and challenges. Again, when I was growing up, I really enjoyed puzzles and challenges. But I think if we want kids to grow up as creative thinkers, to be able to use their imaginations, to be able to come up and be able to deal with the unexpected situations they confront, in our mind, it's really important for them to think how to work on a project, how to start with an idea, to create a prototype, to get feedback from others, to constantly iterate what you're working on to come up with something new and improved. So we really want to focus on kids creating these type of projects. I'd make the analogy with learning to write, that we really see coding as analogous to learning to write. You're writing different sorts of things. You're writing animated stories and games. But the same way that in learning to write, you're learning to express yourself, you also learn how to organize your thinking. Similarly with coding, you're learning to organize your thinking and to express yourself. Now, learning to write, you could learn to write just by learning grammar and punctuation. And grammar and punctuation are important. But in my mind, what you really want kids to learn is how to express their ideas. And that's what we do in Scratch. Of course, they have to learn the basics of the grammar of Scratch, but by making projects, they learn how to express their ideas. With a lot of learning to code sites, you're learning the equivalent of punctuation, spelling, and grammar. And again, it's useful to know those things, but in my mind, it's even more important to learn to express yourself. And that's where project-based approaches come in. Let's go to the second P, peers. And again, I think we all know that the best learning happens not when you're just by yourself, but when you're learning with and from one another. And we've really tried to support that in Scratch. So if you go to a project page in Scratch, you'll see all the different ways that kids can interact with each other, that people can view other projects. This project was viewed 8,500 times. As in many sites like this, you can love other projects or favorite, which is like bookmarking it so you can see it later. You also can write comments. Here's 1,600 comments on this project. So people get feedback from one another, which helps them in their iteration of projects. They get ideas from those comments. There's also remixes. This was remixed 27 times. So again, the people can use the raw materials from one project to build on it and to create their own projects. So these are all different ways that people are interacting, communicating, building on each other's work. As I mentioned, one of the things that surprised us was the degree to which kids create tutorials the way that IPSY did. So in fact, like here's a whole gallery where someone gathered many tutorials from the site. They called it Tutorial Madness, with all different types of tutorials that people have created, both from how to draw things in Scratch to how to program different things in Scratch, even tutorials on how to make your projects popular in Scratch. So we knew that we would create tutorials in Scratch, or some educators would create tutorials, but we were really delighted to see that kids themselves were creating tutorials to share their ideas. We find that lots of kids really want to share their knowledge with others. They've set up whole studios where they offer advice. Put your project here, I'll help you debug it. Kids created a welcoming committee for newcomers to Scratch where they would help newcomers learn the basics of Scratch. So we've really leveraged the willingness of the community to share their ideas with each other to really make it a learning community where kids in Scratch are learning with and from one another. The third P is passion. And again, we feel that people, not just kids, but everyone is going to learn most when they're working on things that they really care deeply about. When people are interested, they're willing to work longer and harder. They're willing to persist in the face of difficulty. So for us, we're always trying to see how we can sort of leverage the interests and passions of kids. But again, this is very different from a lot of online learning sites. Just to give you an example, I'm going to show a little video clip of Sal Khan, the founder of Khan Academy, when he gave his TED Talk a few years ago. And right after he gave his TED Talk, that was talking about Khan Academy, he has an exchange with Bill Gates on stage where he talks about some of the ways that they work to motivate kids in Khan Academy. I'll play the video clip and then talk about it. So you see there's lots of laughter and applause with this idea that tens of thousands of 5th and 6th graders can be steered in different directions by how you give them points and badges and rewards. But when I hear that, I'm not very excited about that. The idea that you can steer, that the idea of education should be steering 5th and 6th graders in the way that the publisher or the creator of content wants to steer them isn't the way I see creative learning developing. For us, what we really want to see is we want to see kids develop an agency for them to be able to figure out the paths that they want to take. So in designing our website, we always are focused on how we can give kids the autonomy to find out the things they're interested in following up on. And there's a growing amount of research that's showing that building on that type of intrinsic motivation, about building on interests, is far more effective in the long term than extrinsic motivation, like points and rewards, that might be successful in the short term. You definitely can get people to do things in the short term, but growing research is showing that if people, even if they're motivated in the short term by external rewards, if you do this, you'll get that, it often can have a negative effect in the long term. There's a book that Daniel Pink wrote a few years ago called Drive that I really liked, and in the Drive he writes the following. He says, rewards can deliver a short-term boost, just as a jolt of caffeine can keep you cranking a few more hours, but the effect wears off, and worse, can reduce a person's longer-term motivation to continue the project. And researchers are saying this over and over. They do studies where, in one example, there was one at a university where there was a certain type of puzzle they want kids to solve, and they paid one group and they didn't pay another group. And not surprisingly, the group that was paid worked longer and harder on solving the puzzles. But then they invited all the people back the next day and didn't pay any of them. And the kids who had been paid the first day worked less than anybody else. They'd been conditioned to expect a reward, and then they weren't interested anymore in doing these activities. So in the Scratch website, we're always focused on how can we draw on kids' interest. We really downplay the points. We even minimize, kids they will look for ways to quantify things. They want to see who can get the most followers. We used to show how many followers everyone have. Now we have, if you have more than 100 followers, it just says 100 plus, because we don't want Scratch to be a game of collecting followers or who can make the most projects, but the quality of your projects. So on the profile page, we don't highlight so big all the numbers that the kids have, but we highlight what they've produced, their portfolio. So we really emphasize their portfolio, the things that they care about. And we found that we get a lot of long-term success from that. The kids will continue to stay on the Scratch website much longer than lots of other sites. And then the fourth P, play. Actually, I sometimes call play the most misunderstood P, because when I say play, I don't just mean having fun, although it's fine to have fun. When I say play, I mean more of a playful spirit of experimenting, trying new things, taking risks. I think creative learning experiences are based on the ability to try new things, to be willing to take risks, to not worry about the failure. So that's what I see when I talk about play, that play is about an approach, a stance towards the world, an attitude that makes you willing to try new things, be willing to fail, to then revise and to test the boundaries and to do new things. And again, we see that happening a lot in Scratch, but it's partly trying to set up the right community. If you set up a community where people are going to be ridiculing each other when something doesn't work, people aren't going to be willing to experiment and play. So we work hard to make it a supportive community where people are encouraged to take those types of risks. So that's some of the things that we've been able to do with Scratch. And a few years ago, we thought, well, how might we apply these 4 Ps to online courses? Because to be honest, when I first saw a few years ago the first MOOCs come out, I felt that the initial MOOCs really were not very well aligned with these 4 Ps. An awful lot of them were mostly just about delivery of instruction from videos and taking some quizzes. And that really wasn't lined up with the approach to learning and education that I thought was so important for people to be able to flourish in tomorrow's society. So if we really want people to grow up, to be prepared for a society that will demand and value creative thinking more than ever before, we need to find ways to support learning that's aligned with the 4 Ps. So as online courses spread, and I think there are all sorts of good reasons to support online courses, that we've tried to think, well, how is it that we can have online courses that are more aligned with the 4 Ps? And rather than just complaining about the courses we didn't like, we thought, well, we should give it a try ourselves. So along with my colleagues Philip Schmidt and Natalie Rusk, we did an online course starting a couple years ago that we called Learning Creative Learning. So it was actually a course for educators, designers, to learn about our process of creative learning. So in the course, we talked about these 4 Ps of creative learning and gave advice about how to support young people developing as creative thinkers and creative learners. But in a recursive twist, we didn't want to just teach about creative learning. We wanted the approach of the course to embody the approaches of creative learning. And we knew that wasn't going to be easy to do. And I'll say up front, I'm not pointing to this as a great success story that we've accomplished all of that. This was our experiment. In some ways, we were playing with online courses. We were experimenting and tinkering with online courses, just in the way that we want kids to be experimenting and tinkering and playing. So we were testing the boundaries, trying new things. Right up front, we said, this is a big experiment, because we wanted people to be a little more generous when things didn't go well. So we admitted up front, this is an experiment, we're trying new things, but join us in this activity. So as we did it, as we spread the word, we got a good number of people around the world to participate. We had about a little over 10,000 people who joined an online community to participate in the course. And we tried to align it with the 4 Ps. Rather than just having a series of lectures, we tried to have lots of project-based activities. Each week we would suggest projects to people and then encourage them to document the projects and share it online. So like in the first week of the course, we had them do the marshmallow challenge. I don't know how many of you know that about building things with a marshmallow and then critiquing, your own process. And we had participants in the course do it, but also a lot of them tried to do it with their kids or with their students and then documenting that and talking about it. Or we had people try our Scratch software and make their own projects and write about their experience with that. Or to visit a community learning space and report on that, or set up their own community learning space and do that. So it's very project-based of people sharing, with one another. We also tried to, rather than just having some videotaped lectures ahead of time, we did live weekly conversations. So it's different along two dimensions. We thought it would be useful to be live in that we wanted to give people feedback about what we were seeing in the community, especially as we were beginning this new course. Actually, I think it was very successful that as people posted their projects, we would refer to them. Now, of course, if there's 10,000 people join the community, we're only going to be able to refer to a very small number. But I think people really appreciated that we gave some concrete examples that last week so-and-so in France did this project, and so-and-so in Brazil did this project, and this is what caught our attention about it. And rather than just lecturing, we organized everything as conversations. Actually, this was a conversation I did with Joey Ito, the director of the Media Lab, and his sister Mimi Ito, who's a cultural anthropologist who's done a lot of great work in the area of technology and learning. So we were talking to them about interest-based learning and talking about their own experiences as learners, but also how they support learning in different ways. Now, in these weekly conversations, one of the most interesting things to us was, as we had these live weekly conversations, we also had a back channel where people in the community could talk with each other. And some of the things that we saw in the back channel was people would comment and give extra ideas to one another about the things they were hearing. They would also say things like this: I'll have to watch the video again. I was so intrigued by the back channel, I paid more attention to this conversation. Or someone else said, I think I enjoyed the chat more than listening to the talk. Or I might do the chat a bit more next time and watch the talk later. And actually, this made us really happy. Even though they weren't necessarily listening to our conversations in real time, this was achieving just what we wanted. They were intrigued enough with it that they got engaged in conversation. And that's what we really wanted, to let them be connecting with peers, learning with and from one another. We also tried to make smaller groupings, because we knew that it's hard to have a conversation among so many people online. I forgot about this. We did various ways for people to try to get to know each other. So we asked everybody to put up a video that could be at most 1 minute long, just introducing themselves. And of course, not everyone could watch all the videos, but it gave a spirit of the diversity of the course and to connect with some other people you might find interesting. And then we tried to organize into smaller groupings. So there were more than 500 smaller cohorts. We initially organized around geographic time zones, so it'd be easier for people to have conversations with each other. But then we encouraged people to self-organize around their interests based on things that in the larger discussion groups they were finding out. I must admit, I don't think this works so well. We have a lot of work to do to figure out the best way of organizing the smaller groupings. We definitely feel the ones that worked well were great. So there were a few small groupings that were really successful and the people gained so much from it. But I think we have a lot to learn about how to figure out the best way to support the types of groupings that are going to be successful. There's also people organize local, in-person meetings as well. Actually, this is from a local school in Cambridge where all the teachers got together and had their own discussion group around the course. When my colleague Philip Schmidt went to a conference in Berlin, he found out there was a whole group in Berlin that was watching the course together physically so they could have their conversations. So we saw lots of people were gaining, although we didn't do anything to organize this, people in the community were organizing themselves. Another thing we really were happy with was the degree to which people in the community really took the lead, or took the initiative to organize lots of other things. And that comes into this idea of the participants being the collaborators. People in the community, this was like some people in the community started to document each session and put up their documentation, oftentimes with visualizations that were far nicer than anything that we could have done. Other people organized these local groups. Other people did summaries of the readings to share with one another. Other people did different types of maps for people to locate, where they could work together with one another. Now, as I said in the beginning, I'm not going to claim that this was all a success, We were very happy that we had this feeling that it started as a course and it turned into a community. For us, one indication of a success was when the course ended, lots of people said, "Can you leave the community alive? We want to keep talking to each other." So the fact that lots of people wanted to continue and they saw themselves as a community we saw as a real sign of success. Now, it's not that the community sustained itself for an real extended period of time. As often happens with these things, it did peter out with time. But the fact that people got that sense that it wasn't just a course but a community is something that we felt good about and a sign that really was aligned with our principles. So I think we still have a lot to learn about how to really support the 4 Ps, but we remain convinced as ever this is the right goal to have. As we try to make online courses, there are a lot of things you can do just for delivering information online is the straightforward, easiest thing to do. We think if we really want to prepare people to be full participants in tomorrow's society, in a society where creative thinking will be more needed and more valued than the past, we need to make sure that they grow up, whether it's at a young age learning to code in online communities like Scratch, or with the online courses they continue to take through their lives, to be supported through projects, peers, passion, and play. And that's the way they'll really be prepared to be full, active, creative participants. It's not easy to do this. We're experimenting with this. We hope you experiment with this, and I hope all of us can work together and share ideas with one another of how we can make better online learning environments by giving Ps a chance. Thanks very much. We do have time for a few questions. If people want to just stand and shout out a question, I can repeat it if anybody has questions or comments or suggestions or critiques. It seems like not a hard question to crack. The first one's always the most difficult one. It's hard to get the first question. Okay.
What was the platform that you guys used to run your course?
Well, the first year we did it, we just did it in, sorry, thank you. The platform that we used for the course. For the first year we did it, we just used sort of Google platforms, Google Plus communities. We wanted to have something that was accessible to everybody that other people could then replicate easily. So we did that, and we saw some advantages, disadvantages. The second time we did the course, we experimented with different discussion group platforms, like Discourse was one that we did. So we've been experimenting with different types of platforms. And that's one where I think we still have learning to do, and it'd be great to learn more from the experiences that people here have had. So I think that's something that we've been experimenting and still learning more. And it's Philip Schmidt, who sort of organized that side of the course. And it'd be great to have him be in conversations with some of you about some of the directions to take on that. Yes?
I was wondering if you could just think a little bit more about professional education and the skills of science and engineering and a lot of our domains are, lifelong learning, as you were talking earlier.
Yeah.
I know it's hard, and maybe throw out some good examples of stuff you admire out there.
Yeah. Well, so the question was about sort of professional learning, as continuing to learn, in the work, the people who are already in the workplace, maybe particularly in some of the science and math areas, but even in general, just continual learning on a professional level. And again, our online course did some of that, because that was for adults, and a lot of it was people who were just working at educational publishers or educators themselves, and they saw this as part of their professional development. But I also think there are lessons learned from just our Scratch work. Although we designed it for 8 to 15-year-olds, we were surprised. First of all, it's gotten used by adults as well, particularly on college campuses. We didn't design it for that, but it's getting used to the growing number of universities for introductory computer science courses. So like at Harvard, they use it in the first week for people to be able to have a success right away and to be able to get the core concepts right away, and then they shift to other languages. At Berkeley and Brown and Rutgers and other universities, they use it for a whole semester, I believe, Scratch or variants of Scratch. So I think we've seen these same approaches can be useful at all different ages. One of the challenges, I think, when we think about the 4 Ps of creative learning, these projects, peers, passion, and play, they aren't necessarily time efficient. So if one of the goals is to master some content in a time efficient way, a lot of the ways that we've done it, whether in the Scratch community or our course, are not necessarily going to be seen as the most effective ways. Sometimes if you just want to have a specific set of content and you want to learn the specific content to apply in a specific situation, direct delivery of information can be the best approach. So I think one has to think about what types of professional development one wants. I still would think if the goal is to help people develop as creative thinkers, to take creative approaches to the work they're doing, then taking approaches similar to what we've done in the Scratch community and our Creative Learning course is going to be the best way to develop those approaches to approaching problems. If the focus is more just on learning some specific content, then it might be different. Yes, in the back?
I use the MIT app inventor, which seems to have some Scratch extensions, and it only works on Android, and it's accessible via Google Play. I'm wondering if you'll be porting that to iOS so that learners who are using Apple products.
Yeah. Right. So the question was about App Inventor, which is another MIT project that allows people to develop apps for phones using a programming environment very similar to Scratch. And it's not so surprising. The lead sort of visionary for App Inventor is Hal Abelson at MIT. Hal, in fact, was my dissertation advisor when I was a graduate student at MIT. And when Hal was getting started with App Inventor, he was influenced by Scratch. So there's been a lot of flow of ideas back and forth between Scratch and App Inventor. So I do think App Inventor takes a lot of similar approaches, both to programming and also supporting of the learning experience. Part of the question was about the fact that App Inventor right now is only working on Android and not for iOS or other platforms, and might that be changing? Actually, I haven't kept up. I'm not sure the latest, and Hal Abelson or others on the team would be better, but I do know one of the challenges is that with a difference between App Inventor and Scratch. With Scratch right now, when you create a project, it gets shown in a web browser. With App Inventor, you're creating an app. So with Android apps, it's easy to then for anyone to make an app and simply put it for others to see on the Google Play Store. With the Apple App Store, it's not as easy. It's to be registered as developers, so it's less easy to just have build your own app system that people can then easily put up in the App Store in the Apple ecosystem. So that's at least one of the constraints. But I know that they're looking for ways around it. I think they also started with Android for a variety of reasons, just to focus. I think ideally over time, I do think it would be great if it was on other platforms, but that's at least one of the challenges of doing it in the Apple environment. Of course, there are other ways you can make other ways to have it run in browsers within the Apple devices. So there are other ways around it, but that was at least one of the challenges. Yes? Excuse me, it's about Scratch? First of all, I should learn more about XBlock, and it would be great to work with some of you of trying to see how we connect to Scratch. One thing I will say, we're very interested in Scratch these days, so it's a good time for asking this type of question. As we were beginning, we just had enough in our hands just to sort of make the Scratch website work in our own internal, community. But right now that the community is growing and thriving, we're ready to reach out. So we're doing much more because we want Scratch to extend outside of Scratch. Let me tell you about a few things we're already doing along those lines, and then maybe this can be a foundation for doing yet more. So one thing that we're doing is we have a separate website called ScratchX, where the X stands for experimental extensions. So we allow people for developers, this is meant for developers, not for the kids who are using Scratch, but developers in JavaScript to create their own Scratch blocks that then fit in within the Scratch ecosystem. And those extra blocks to be used to connect with physical devices. So we have people like we were meeting last week with people from iRobot, who are making a Scratch extension to control the iRobot Create robot. We also worked with people at Intel made an extension for their RealSense cameras to be able to have blocks for using the Intel RealSense cameras with Scratch. Also, you can make extensions to connect to web services and online data sources. It's like we're working with Wolfram Research to be able to have Scratch blocks that access data from Wolfram Research. So we're very interested in being able to sort of reach outside of Scratch. Because right now in Scratch, you have this box that your animation runs in, and that's all that it can be. It can't really reach outside of that box. So you could do a weather map, but it's just a static weather map. We certainly want people to be able to access National Weather Service, pull in real-time weather data, put it on their Scratch website, on their Scratch web program. So we're very interested now in stretching and reaching more outside of Scratch. We feel we're at a good time for doing that. So it'd be great to have further conversations of how we continue to extend Scratch in different ways. Yes?
Are you looking at Scratch getting into corporate learnings and case studies for basically management simulators or something like that?
Yeah. So the question is about Scratch in corporate learnings and management simulators. The one thing, I think it's possible, and I do think one of the advantages is you don't need a lot of background to just dive in and start using it, so that would be the advantage. One thing I'd be cautious about is it's worth using Scratch when there's a real leverage to having programmability. There's certain types of simulations where, if you're just doing a simulation of a particular activity, then just giving people sliders and parameters to adjust might be good enough. So I think I'd advise using Scratch and the Scratch grammar and programmability if you can really get leverage from the programmability. Because sometimes people see the creative things going on in Scratch, and they might over-apply it and say, well, let's just add Scratch programming blocks. And then we look more closely, and their applications don't really need programmability. So I think it's great to look for programmability because I think it's a great learning experience for people too, and it gives me greater flexibility for people to be able to add programmability. But that would be the one caution I'd have, is to make sure that you're really leveraging the programmability in order to do it. Okay, I'm afraid you run out of time, but thanks very much, and look forward to finding more ways to collaborate, both on a general way about new ways of thinking about online learning, but also specifically around Scratch. Thanks a lot.
Okay, we are on this one. Are we supposed to start with this slide?
Yes.
Okay. Not from beginning. How do you do from this slide?
Click on it. Present, I guess.
I guess. Okay.
It worked. Am I mic'd? Do I?
No,
Okay.
stay here.
Okay. I wasn't sure whether I was going to be able to move around. Thank you so much, Mitch, Dr. Resnick. That was just wonderful. I really appreciated the comments that you made, and the talk was just fantastic. Another round of applause, actually, because that was just wonderful. Thank you so much. And I do want to take a second here to thank our sponsors. You'll meet many of them as we go through the conference in the next couple of days, and they're really a large part of what makes this conference possible and have been our ardent supporters, many of them for a long, long time. And so we just want to have a quick thank you to our sponsors for the conference today. Thanks. I can't wander away. So this happened. Many of you have asked me about it, and so I'll start with a short story about my arm. And by the way, for those of you who bicycle, I'm pretty sure you'll agree with me if you want to work with me on a course on bike safety and have every child in America take that course on edX, of course, and then maybe people won't run into bicyclists when they're trying to get to work. So one of the things that happened since I've been disabled for the last couple of weeks is that I've had a lot of help. When you lose some ability, people tend to step in and help. And so even though they may have different interesting motivations for providing that help, intrinsic, extrinsic, or otherwise, people tend to come to your aid. And so I'll give you a couple of examples. One day after I had this accident, my daughter and I were scheduled to go to New York City to see a Broadway play. Well, that didn't look very possible at all because I was quite incapacitated. But my daughter said, and again, you can decide what you think of the motivation here. My daughter said, "Oh, we're going to that play. I'll do everything. I'll buy all the tickets. I will get all the transportation. I will carry all the bags. I don't care what has to happen. I'm going to do everything, and you're going to get to see that play with me." So we went, and we saw the play. Fun home, awesome play. Second thing, anecdote in this same vein. I coach a soccer team. And for the last 2 weeks, I've had lots of games and practices and everything else that has to happen with a bunch of active boys who want to play soccer because you're their coach and they have a schedule to keep and they're going to keep moving forward with or without you. And so that's what they did. They came together and they've been running the team for 2 weeks, coming to practices, running the drills, occasional prodding. For sure, they're only 13 and 14-year-old, but really stepping up and making the practices and the games happen. 2 games, 1 win, 1 loss. Oh well. And then finally, and this is a little off the beaten path, I suppose, of most people's experiences, but I'm a very ardent gardener. I have lots of tasks and projects and everything going all the time in my house. And many things have been falling away in the fall preparation that many people who are gardeners do. And so yesterday, I enlisted the aid of 2 people in my family who have never used a chainsaw before to come, and I talk about this a lot, to learn how to use a chainsaw, use it, and accomplish the task. They were skeptical of my ability to coach them through this activity, but willing and needing of no reward. So what I realized about all these experiences, and there are many other, things of people bringing food over to my house and so forth, and lots of other things, and this long set of stories is by way of saying my community, the community of people around me, really stepped up in the last 2 weeks to be my left arm. And for Open edX, in dire times or normal ones, you guys are our left arm. You're the people who make it possible for us to really do all the work, ambitious, incredible work that we are trying to accomplish. We literally can't do it without you. I can't operate without my left arm. And I have a community of people who are there helping me. And I'll, obviously get my limb back. But this community is very important to all of us who can sometimes get very focused on the very single thing we're doing that day, that week, that month, our goals, personally, professionally, in the corporate environment. But we really rely on all of you, both to motivate us, to inspire us, to drive us forward, to push us to do things that we would not ordinarily be able to do on our own. And so I use this story just to help motivate the next several comments that me and my colleagues are going to make, and really to emphasize the importance of you in helping us. And of course, we help you too, and that's how we build a community together. So without further ado. So what is Open edX? I think many of you know already, but I want to take a few minutes to talk about edX and how the parentage of edX actually helps you understand what Open edX is all about. So edX is a nonprofit venture, and some things are not covered, but I'll give a little bit more detail here. edX is a nonprofit company. We're also a destination website, and we're a platform, and that's where Open edX comes in. So we were founded by MIT and Harvard. We have more than 80 members of our consortium, and we have 3 goals. And although those goals are ones that we take very seriously as a company and through our website and through our partners and all the activities that we do with them, I think that, as already has been talked about, some somewhat here, and we will continue to talk about over the conference and beyond, we really rely on all of you to extend even farther than we could ever imagine to reach ourselves. So when we say expand access to quality education for all, we don't mean just make our site bigger and bigger and bigger and get more people to go to it. We mean everybody, everywhere, using the software, platform, websites, private, public, small, large, all of it. Professional education, the whole suite, everything. And with you, you all help us make that goal even remotely possible. Improve on-campus education. So we have a large advantage here. We have some of the most elite, prestigious universities in the world who are our partners, and we have the pleasure to work with them and to build amazing things together with them. But you all also have a lot of access into universities and other educational institutions and have the ability to teach us so much about on-campus education that we, even with our large reach and so many different interesting partners that we have, we still can't know without you. So we consider this a shared goal. We have a working group that's been assembled for more than a year called the Campus Applications Working Group. Some of its members are here today, who've been really talking about the ways in which campus education can benefit from the MOOC movement, right? From all the work that's happening with edX and Open edX. This is a part of our mission as well, to educate people on campus and to make campus education better. And finally, to advance research and online learning. Really, the idea there is that we enable data collection. That's our job as a platform, right? We make it possible for you to learn while you're teaching, right? To bring educational materials to all of your partners, to all of the students that are out there, all the learners that you can reach, and then to learn something from it, not just for that to be a one-way avenue, right? You're trying to learn and become better over time, and this is something that we really strongly make ourselves a goal of every single time we put new materials out there, every single time we put new platform features in. It's all data enabled. It's there to drive research. It's there to drive learning. That's a huge goal. And here's the website, which you've seen a little bit already. But some quick history. We were started in November of 2011. Notably, we had our first MOOC in 2012 of March. That's where we sort of celebrate our birthday. We did open source on June 2013, so that's the day when we celebrate Open edX's birthday. And today we're at over 500 MOOCs and 5 million students, so we won't dwell on that. So that's the history of edX a little bit, just in a nutshell, just to give you a little bit of background and to know that your history and our histories are becoming entwined even more and more as we go forward. So what is Open edX? It's not the nonprofit organization. It's not the website. It's the platform. It's the project. It's this community. So find yourself up there, if you can. If I forgot you, tell me. We use this slide a lot. I would like to have it be thorough. I would like it to be accurate. There are some that fell off from last year. That's sad. It happens. Some things don't persist. Everything's an experiment. We're all still doing this together. But there's a lot of long-standing partners up there who've been with us from their very beginning, and you know who you are. And this is as thorough as we have it at the moment. But please help us make this a big enough group of people that it doesn't fit on one slide. Make it bigger. But ideally, this can be as many sites as we want it to be, right? There's sort of infinite expansion here as a possibility. It's a project. We're trying to build a platform. We need the community, and we want this to just grow and grow. Here's a little infographic by country. You can see where we're dominant. We have a lot of room to continue to expand, to reach into areas of the world where we don't have influence yet, right? Where people just haven't discovered us or can't afford to get up and running, but we have programs to try to build out those communities over time and to try to reach as many people as we can, not just in the places that have the most advantage, but wherever we can find them. Here's a graphic about courses and languages, just to give a snapshot. When we first started, everything was English. Pretty much all of it, Ned, like every single part of this pie was English maybe? Right. But you can see it's amazing. French, wow, nice. beautiful dominance there by French, Chinese, Spanish. Everybody's catching up. We add a new language to this pie every month or so. So there's some real growth there in other language sites of Open edX. So about 150 sites that we know about. Whether you self-report them or we discover you, we have this count at the moment. But we'd like this to grow in the poll, the survey that was advertised. Please definitely go do that and let us know about you. And if you can't advertise your site because it's private or whatever, we'd still like to know about it, and we don't have to publicize it. But we'd like to know what you're doing, what are you up to, how are you helping people in the community, how can we help you be better and better. 1,500 courses, as I not mentioned before, 18 languages, 40 countries. So a quick look back. This is our community growth curve. It ain't a curve. It's a line, straight on up, always up. So this is really encouraging, and we sort of hold on to this statistic because we think this is really an indicator of the health of the community. People join the code mailing list, and a lot of them just lurk. They're sitting there watching what's happening in the community, just wanting to know, how do I learn, what's going on, when do I jump in, how do I ask questions. We divert people to the mailing list a lot just to help the community help themselves, and so we love this growth, this line over time. And finally, before I hand it over to my colleagues, I just want to note a couple of contributions from this year that were significant, and there's a long list. This is not exhaustive by any means, so I put a link there, and I think we're going to distribute these slides somehow or something. I don't. Anyway, you can come and ask me where this site is, and then we can show you where this list of the Open edX pull requests are. So there's a few notable ones. We worked in a group with several people working on LTI. I not mentioned that before. Didn't want to be remiss in not mentioning UBC, who was a huge partner for us working on that, but really it was led by Phil McGackie at Harvard as the lead engineer on that effort, and then helped by many of you in the community building adjacent code. UBC contributed, UQ. Many people were on the calls every week, talking with us about what they could see as the right use cases to support, how to whittle down our very ambitious original goals to something that we could actually achieve and put out there and then to start using. And there are a few schools that are using that now and giving us great feedback so that we continue to make improvements there. So that was a really joint effort of the community. And in that case, we really let everybody do the work. We were there as guide, we were there to help support, but that was really a community-led effort, and I mean community. There was a lot of people involved. And the same with SSO, although there was a single, more or less a single source of development for that project by OpenCraft. There was a lot of input from the community, a lot of review, many people talking about it, and we had first adopters with UBC on our Edge site, which is where it's deployed right now, but we'll expand that access later on. And again, really appreciate the willingness and the openness of the group that worked with us on that to, think about how it could really get done, and not just talk about it, but actually then do it. So there was those are two huge projects that went out this year. No less important, although it was more or less done almost entirely by one or two developers working on their own in conjunction with people in edX, was OLI's hinting. I don't see Ross, but that's because the glare is big here. He's here somewhere. Who was really the product manager for that and guided the OLI and hinting group. And that PR made it all the way through to edX.org, which they don't all do, right? A lot of them are deployed in Open edX, and then we sort of decide whether we're going to pull that, and like all of you, adopt that onto our platform. But Ross and company were really insistent that end up being a feature that absolutely everybody could use, and that it had high utility, and we agreed with him, and so we pulled it all the way through to edX.org, and that was a big effort, but I think the extra effort really paid off there. And staff-graded assignments, MIT, I see Peter down in the front here, pulling XBlock, the shawl, maybe disappeared, I don't know. Oh, there he is, okay. So many, many more, and these were just a few of the contributions, and I threw a couple of screenshots in there. There's Canvas instance showing edX as a tool provider. There's a talk today at 1:30. I might be wrong about that. But there's a today in the afternoon, a talk on LTI and SSO, both campus integrations projects that we did. So you can come and learn more about this from the people who built it, not from me. And there's a picture of the hinting and feedback contribution from OLI Stanford. So we had a good year, and I'm really proud of the work that so many people in the community did, and my part, however minor, in it, to rally around certain topics and certain areas of interest. And I look forward to doing more of that with all of you in the coming year, and really inventing together all the new functionality that you want to have in the platform that we may not get to right away, and that you have ambition and desire, and to continue to work with us to make that happen. So I'm going to turn it over to my engineering colleagues who are going to continue the conversation. There you go, Mark.
Thank you, Beth. Yeah. So I just want to take a few minutes and introduce the engineering team behind a lot of the work that you've been seeing, at least at edX. So first off, I should say who I am, since I'm relatively new to the company. My name is Mark Hazeltine. I'm the CTO. I joined in March. So I'm leading the technology strategy at edX, and the engineering efforts for both the website and the platform work that we do. Prior to edX, in case people are curious, I came directly from GoDaddy. I was at a small startup that they bought. I spent quite a bit of time at Oracle and Alta Vista prior to that. So I do not have an educational background, don't claim to have one, so I'm learning quite a bit from all of you in this room, as well as many, many people at edX. I am a big proponent of free online education and our Open edX initiative. It's one of the main reasons why I decided to join the company. So I've got my contact information up there. Please use it if you need my help. I'm definitely a resource, and I should be a resource to everybody in this room. So being the new guy, I thought I would introduce the Open edX team. I didn't know them before I joined, so I'm sure many of you do, but many of you don't. This is the group of people that are working directly with the open source community. So first up is Joel Barchowskis, who's over there, relatively new to the company. He's the engineering manager, took over some responsibilities from Ned, who was running the group last year at this time, I believe, when the conference was. So Ned Batchelder is moved into an architectural role. He's doing a lot more technical work. I think he's much happier now doing that. You'll hear more from him in a minute. Definitely our kind of in-house Python expert and leader. Serena Canelake, who's here in the front. She is our open source pull request master, so I'm sure many of you have heard from her or interacted with her. She's very passionate about accessibility and internationalization. She's going to be involved in some of those projects in the coming year. And she is also giving a talk tomorrow, I believe, on the pull request process, probably the number one thing that we get questions about. So DB Baumgold is right there. Another engineer on the team. He does a lot of the releases, the named releases. So Ned's going to talk about that in a little bit, but he does a tremendous amount of work to get those things out. And then Molly DeBlanc, who's over here in the corner, our community manager, very big advocate for all things free and open. She made that very clear when I started and continues to do so. And is, big supporter of building a bigger and better community. edX engineering. So with the Open edX team sits within a larger organization. And so I thought I'd introduce that larger organization a little bit. Many of whom are in the room. If you are an edX employee, can you raise your hand just so people can see who you are? Please interact with them. So it's about 80 full-time employees today. Most of them are in Cambridge, although we do have quite a few remote employees as well. We're growing by about 20% this year. We had about 20 new hires in the past 12 months and growing at a good clip. The broader team works on various aspects of the platform. We're grouped by different focus areas. So I figured I would introduce those a little bit because you're likely, if you submit a pull request, to hit one of them. So first up is our teaching and learning team. So when you're inside of a course, it's referred to as T&L internally. That's why I always put it up that way. When you're inside a course, they do all the courseware technology that you're going to interact with. We have a mobile team that launched our mobile iOS and Android apps this year. Primarily video watching today, although there's a pretty big release imminent to incorporate assessments, and we have a lot of various new features coming in the next year. We have an analytics group. I believe Victor, who's the product manager for that, is giving a talk today or tomorrow on our analytics capabilities. But as Beth emphasized, one of our core points of our mission is data collection and analysis, and we put some real weight behind it. There's our e-com team, which supports our edX.org site, although some of the e-com work actually does make it into Open edX. We're planning on releasing our new e-commerce platform in the next named release. Our solutions team, which does basically tailoring of the Open edX platform for some specific partners. McKinsey's a good example. A lot of the innovations that they create end up back in the platform. We have our core platform and test teams that underlie pretty much everything that we do and work quite hard to move the platform forward. And of course, our DevOps team that operates the whole thing, and I know many of you interact with them. They're a great resource for us. So I just really want to emphasize that everyone on the engineering team contributes to Open edX in some way. So all 80 of these people and all the growth benefits everyone. They contribute through PR reviews, Q&A on the mailing lists, which are very lively and active, design discussions, writing bits and pieces of documentation. So it's really a two-way street. We get a lot from you, and our team puts a lot into it, and we're very proud of the work that we've been able to do together. So I want to talk a little bit about our commitment to open source and kind of what at least my goals are for the community. So, I think it's an obvious question, like, why are we open source? And, we've had, I think, various explanations, and I want to kind of summarize them here. Certainly, we just can't do it all by ourselves. This is a pretty broad topic to reach 1 billion people. There are lots of different types of learning and different ways to learn. It's just not something that an 80-person organization is going to be able to do on their own. The community is just essential to our mission. So we mentioned this, developer community and educational community that's sprung up around Open edX. We rely on your expertise to help us do the right things and know where to go. So we really need your feedback, and we depend on it. Our open source is just part of our DNA. It was planned right from the beginning. I think we're 2.5 years in now, as everybody said. It's just part of what we do and always will be. And I get really strong support just internally from my team that everybody's a big open source supporter, as well as our partners and our board, who offer us a lot of support. So the community goals, and what I want, if anything you take away from my slides, this to hit home, our mission is really to grow the community, to empower it for people to be able to do more things, and then connect the various members of the community. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this in a few slides here. So for growing the community, we need and are dependent on a vibrant ecosystem, right? So that's our partners, our development infrastructure partners, our consulting partners. We need an ecosystem in order to make all of this work, and it's got to be diverse. We want to maintain a low barrier to entry. So in the past year, we introduced with Bitnami a one-button install of the Open edX platform. We want to continue to make innovations like that possible so that it's very easy to get up and running and get a course going. We're, I would say now, trying to figure out what the right balance is between complexity and scalability. So as edX.org grows, we have, I would say, more complex scaling needs, and that necessitates introducing some complexity in the platform, and we want to make sure that it's the right balance so that not everyone has to adopt that kind of complexity if their site isn't as large or doesn't require that kind of scale. And then, of course, getting the word out through mechanisms like this, make sure more people are aware. If they're doing any kind of online learning initiative, they should take a look at Open edX. So for empowering the community, we really want to enable contributions to the project at all levels, so not just technical, but top to bottom. We really want to simplify the development environment, so DevStack is a good example of that. We want to enhance the capabilities of DevStack and make it easier to get contributions going, and with clear extension points, so APIs and on disk formats, just ways so it's easy for people to plug in. We've got dedicated resources for merging. Obviously, it's a big source of feedback we got in the past year. I think we have some good results to report from that. And then just growing the community involvement in the project. So we introduced the concept of community committers in the past year, so people outside of the edX.org offices that are able to commit to the code bases, and architects as well that participate in our process and help us make technical decisions. And then finally, connecting the community. So in the past year, we launched the Open edX portal. There are a lot of things that we want to do with it. But really, we want to use it to encourage people to self-organize and collaborate together, not having to go through edX.org all the time. And really connecting people over similar needs. So where you're trying to accomplish something that someone else is in the community is already trying to do, you should be able to share best practices and get it going together. So again, good things are happening. I'm going to hand it off to Ned, who's going to kind of take us through some of the future directions for the platform.
Hi, I'm Ned Batchelder. As you heard, I had a well-earned demotion over the course of the year, so I'm now more of a technical contributor. Just to be clear, though, I'm still 100% dedicated to the Open edX team. I'm a member of that team, and I'm fully committed to the open source mission of edX, even though we have brought in new people to help organize. You'll also notice that the way we've organized this event, the CEO went first, and then 2 vice presidents, and then the lowly engineer gets to be up here, the last thing standing between you and lunch. So I'm going to try to keep it brief. I know right now it's kind of a Bugs Bunny moment where I'm talking and all you see standing up at the podium is like a roast chicken or something because you're so hungry. So we'll try to get this going. We'll get you into lunch. So we've definitely been listening about the pull request process. This is a very technical, geeky slide showing that we are actually measuring the number of days that pull requests are in our hands rather than in your hands, and the trends of that number of days is going down. That is in large part due to Serena's efforts to keep a crisp process and keep pull requests moving through that process. But we want to keep that trend moving down. And if you have ideas about how to make that happen better, or if you have particular concerns about pull requests, we're here for the next 2 days to hear from you. Right? So the other thing we're going to switch pretty soon is we're going to stop talking at you, and we're going to have a conference where everyone can talk together, and we want to hear from you. Open edX releases. We've done 3 so far named releases of Open edX, named after trees. Aspen and birch started us off. They were really minimum viable releases. We took a point in time, we tagged the repos, and we called it Aspen. And that was a good first start because it meant that people adopting the platform could all choose the same chunk of code rather than everyone differing by a little bit, so people could start talking together about it. Birch gave us a little bit more discipline around marking those and releasing them. But Cypress is really a bigger step. We had multiple release candidates so that we had better testing in the community. That release got packaged by Bitnami as a one-click installer, which is a great way for you to sort of kick the tires and just try it out in a really easy to get started way. And we have a support plan going so that we can release follow-ons to Cypress so that if there are important fixes for security or stability or other reasons, we can release just those fixes on top of Cypress so that you can continue supporting your install of Cypress without having to take all of the things that come along with Dogwood. Right, and Dogwood's going to be released by the end of this year. Eucalyptus will be in the spring, and we're going to see point releases, so Cypress.1, Cypress.2, Dogwood.1, as there are reasons for us to add important fixes to those named releases. And again, we want to hear from you about how it's working. Joel, in particular, is going to be running the planning for those next named releases and making the release plan for them much more formalized. So what's next for the open source community, from a technical side at least? So first, not technical, sorry, we want to provide space for you to organize and meet face to face. It's very easy in our online virtual world, right? We're all here to move education online. It's easy for us to think that online is enough. But I'm really pleased to see all of your commitment to face-to-face communication, that you all came here. I drove about 30 minutes and felt like I came a long way to do an unusual thing. You have all come from much farther. Getting together face-to-face is really important. So conferences are important. This is our second annual Open edX conference. We're going to be doing more next year. There are other conferences happening. George Washington University is running the Open edX Universities Symposium, which is a one-day conference in November, and we're really excited to see that happen. We don't have to run the conferences. If you have an idea for a different geography or a different theme or a different audience that you'd like to get people together for, do it. We can help you. But there's no reason that you need to wait for us to create a conference for you to get together. Meetups are a great way to make things happen on a much smaller scale. There's an Open edX meetup in New York that Michael has been running. We've just started an Open edX meetup in Boston. I was just talking to Yasu Watanabe from Gakko in Japan. They're going to be getting a Japanese event going together of some form. That's really exciting to hear, right? And I didn't even know that before I showed up here this morning. So I've already met people, talked to them about what they're doing, and we're learning about more things happening in the community. That's really exciting. And hackathons are another great way to get technical people together and level up their skills and their ability to use the platform. We're going to be doing a hackathon this week, Wednesday and Thursday, in downtown Boston. There was an enormous hackathon in France back in May. Really good to see those things happening. If you want to learn how to get a hackathon going, there's a talk either today or tomorrow that the French hackathon organizers are doing about how they did it and showing off the winner of that hackathon, which is really exciting. We want to increase ways that you can contribute. Of course, we're interested in features and fixes being contributed as code, but there's no reason that that's the only way for contribution to happen. We want to make the platform more extensible so that you can build on it without actually changing it. So for instance, XBlocks are a great example right now where you can build code that is separate from the platform but plugs into the platform. So you don't have to contribute it to us. You don't need our review in order to build a new thing that you can run on your instance of the platform. If you want it to run on edX.org, then we're going to review it because it's our servers and we want to understand what's code running on our servers. But XBlocks don't have to be reviewed by us. You don't have to make a pull request. You can just extend the platform. And what we're going to be doing is building more and more APIs over time so that that's more and more possible so that you can build pieces that plug into the system without changing the system. We're going to be continuing to work on improvements to the PR process. Like I said, I want those trend lines to continue to drive down. And there are contributions beyond coding. We have an enormous pile of documentation that can always use improvement. There's translations of the system into other languages. There's organizing events. We just had a message on the mailing list last week from Piotr Mitros, our chief scientist, about having courseware contributed into the commons so that there are courses shared among members of the community, which is a great idea. Why not do that? So we'd like to get that started. So maybe you've got a course that you've written that you'd like to make available to other institutions. So we're always looking for lots of ways for people to make contributions into the community, and it doesn't have to be all about code. But speaking of code, we're making architectural improvements to the platform as we go. Just for our own purposes, but also to make it easier for everyone else to use and contribute to the platform, we're headed towards a more modular system where we have smaller, focused applications that work together. edX platform right now, the main repository of Open edX, is one large repository that has the LMS, it has the CMS, it has a number of other support tools in it. We are looking to break that into smaller pieces. So not only are new capabilities that we're building being built as separate repositories that are separate applications so that they can be tested and deployed independently, but eventually we're going to be breaking up the one large repo that we've got now into smaller pieces. Most notably, we'll be splitting the LMS and the CMS apart so that you can have one studio that feeds 4 LMSs or 5 studios that feed 1 LMS, or you can export your course from this studio and send it to your friends on another continent to run on their LMS, and so on and so forth. We're also very interested in extension points. So APIs, XBlocks, OLX are all great ways to increase the surface area of the application in ways that you can get at it without having to change the insides of the application. The community product roadmap, we publish our roadmap. Beth, who neglected to mention that she was the VP of product at edX when she was up here, so she is in charge of sort of saying where the product is going, both for the edX.org side and the Open edX side. She owns the roadmap. You can get features on the roadmap. All you have to do is twist Beth's arm. Get it? So for instance, Dogwood, which is the named release that will be coming out by the end of this year, is going to have a new theming system that DB did a lot of the engineering on so that you can change the look and feel of your site without having to make invasive changes, so that you can carry that theme along as you upgrade the system underneath it. Otto is our e-commerce system, which is a separately deployable application, which will be part of the Dogwood release. We will be on Django 1.8, which is the most recently supported long-term release of Django, because now we're on Django 1.4 and it's fallen out of support. Eucalyptus is a little far in the future for us to say specifically what's going to be in it, but we'd like to hear from you about what it is that you hear is coming down the pike that you'd specifically want to see done and packaged in Eucalyptus. Or even something that you haven't heard is coming down the pike but you think is missing. So that's what we're here for, right? You need to corner Beth and say, this has to go in, and corner Mark and say, you need to improve the technology this way. That's why they're here, to hear from you. We're also going to be iterating on the LTI, the on-campus support, the content reuse and conversion, OLX and SCORM will be very interesting. For bigger features where it's not obvious what direction to go, we'll put a working group together. So there's an adaptive learning working group that's been put together, co-chaired by Beth at edX and Furcon at Extension Engine, to look at all the interesting research that's being done about how, instead of having a linear sequence through a course, you can have an adaptive sequence through the course, and how best we can build that support into edX. And that'll be a really interesting, exciting project. If you're interested in that, come and get onto that working group. We want to hear about all the interesting use cases to make sure that we've got all the points covered. Accessibility is a big thing we're pushing for. When we say we want to do online education for everyone all around the world, we don't want disabilities of any sort to be an impediment. And so we want to be leaders in an online site that is fully accessible to all. And that's an interesting challenge because we've got a lot of interesting assessments, right? Multiple choice is really easy to make accessible to anyone. We have a lot of interesting X blocks and assessments where it's an interesting challenge. Mark Sadecki is an expert working for edX now. He's doing a talk here about our approach to accessibility. He's written an online course using edX to teach all of us how to do it, and we want to make that course available to you. So watch the portal for progress on the roadmap. Let us know what you want to see on the roadmap. How can you help? Talk to us. I promise this is the last edX person yelling at you all day. Now you can start talking back to us. Get involved, contribute in any of the ways you can. Even just hanging out on the mailing list and answering questions when they come up, that's a contribution and is very valuable to make the community self-supporting and to get the knowledge moving around the system. Tell your friends. Anyone doing education at scale or even not at scale, there are lots of interesting open edX sites that are not trying to teach 1 million students. They've just got an interesting niche that they're trying to teach. Anyone doing online education should be thinking about using open edX, and if you can be an advocate for that idea where you are in your adjacent communities, that would be a big help. So from all of us at edX, thanks for coming. Thanks for being part of Open edX. Thanks for caring enough about this to travel here and be with us today. We're counting on you to be the dandelion seeds going out across the rest of the world over the coming year and spreading the message. Thank you. Just a few logistical points. The end of the day tomorrow is an unconference, meaning that we have time set aside with nothing specific planned. And the idea is that you might have an idea of who you want to talk to about what topics, and that is the time to do that. And there are sign-up sheets in the other downstairs in the Wang Center across the way, next to the demo tables, for you to put down an idea of what you'd like to talk about at the unconference in the hopes of attracting the interest of other like-minded people. And
It's on the second floor.
Sorry, second floor.
Next to breakfast.
Joel, my boss Joel knows way more than I do. And Birds of a Feather is the same thing? Okay, so Birds of a Feather is the same idea, except not specifically for the end of the conference, but if there's a time during the conference where you just like to get some people together, you can put up your ideas there and maybe attract interesting people. It would be really a shame if you came from one side of the world and you came from another side of the world and you're sitting that far apart and never met each other when all you had to do was walk that little bit. So put yourself up on those sheets, get interesting groups going together. There's lots of ad hoc meeting space all around, and feel free to use that. You don't have to sit and listen to people showing slides to you. You can just do unconference time the whole time if that's going to be the most productive way for you to do it. And in terms of conference experts, Joel organized most of this and knows a lot. Serena, no. DB, no. No one claims to know anything. Where's Molly? Molly left. All right, ask Joel. Joel knows everything. And other than that, it's time for lunch, and enjoy yourselves. Thank you. Okay. Huh? Thank you.